Okay, Ben, so another area that you're very passionate about is the Equality Act 2010. You asked the question to Jacob Rees-Mogg in the Commons last week. Do you want to change that, or do you want to scrap it altogether, Ben?
We've got to do something with it because it doesn't work as it's meant to. Originally it was about making sure that nobody faces barriers, faces discrimination based on those physical characteristics, whether that's skin color or gender, sexuality, whatever that may be. And we can all agree with that. That's absolutely right, that you shouldn't face those additional barriers. But it's gone beyond that, hasn't it? And actually, I held a debate in Westminster Hall end of last year, which was about how it seems now in some ways to discriminate against some of the disadvantaged groups in our society. We know that the biggest drivers of people's life chances are things like your socioeconomic status, how much money you got, geography, where you live in the country, what is your access to services and support. But they're not included in this, right? So you end up in this perverse scenario where a rich black kid from a well-connected family in Hampshire gets more support under this Equality Act and positive action through the Equality Act compared to a poor white kid from a single parent living in poverty in Mansfield. And that's not right. We've got to really address those, what it is actually in people's individual circumstances that affects their life chances.
Have you seen in your work, Ben, clear examples of, for example, and I have, for example, if you suggest that we introduce initiatives to help white boys, who are the poorest performers in all of education, they're the least likely demographic to get to university. And I know that you care about this because you've campaigned on this and you've spoken on this. If you put forward a motion to help them, is the Equality Act actually a barrier to them getting help?
Well, the misinterpretation of it is because, we've seen examples, haven't we? There was somebody left £1 million, I think, to a private school in Wolverhampton last year to offer scholarships to disadvantaged white boys. We know that disadvantaged white boys are the least likely to be able to access those opportunities in education. And so the Equalities Act should support those kinds of measures because all you have to do to have that positive action is to be able to evidence that need and that inequality. So the stats are all there, but people misinterpret the act. So they think that the protected characteristics are, BME, female, gay, when in reality they are race, gender and sexuality on both sides, in both directions. So the act is misused. It's actually used to prevent the kind of things that it should be doing to support those kids who need help.
Has identity politics, which is a new religion, let's face it, in the media and increasingly in politics, has identity politics become a specific barrier to stop help for those communities that most need it?
I think it really has. It's not just not right, is it, to suggest that all black people have the same experience, or all white people, or all gay people, or all straight people. It's just nonsense. We are individuals and we live and have our own kind of experience and lives that are all different. So what I want to do is to really focus on what is actually our individual need, right? Let's pick out those people who are disadvantaged, those people who need help in whatever way, and let's try and help them rather than lumping everybody into categories based on physical characteristics. So I've got no doubt, and you always have to caveat with this stuff because otherwise people assume you're a horrible racist, whatever. I have no doubt that racism is a real problem. I have no doubt that misogyny, misandry, all these things are genuine issues, and there are people with horrendous views on this stuff. But that isn't the same as a systemic problem that is the direct driver of your life chances, right? We know that the biggest thing that affects how far you can get in life, what opportunities you have, is your, as I say, socioeconomic status and where you come from in the country. So let's look more broadly than physical characteristics. Let's look at those factors, which I'm pleased to say is what Liz Truss and the government are now looking at doing with this equality hub based in Leeds that focus on exactly those things and trying to help a wider range of people, not just based on physical characteristics.
So by going into bat for unfashionable causes, let's be honest, unfashionable causes like white working class boys, and you're challenging the Equality Act, how much stick do you get?
Some. It's been really interesting. It's amazing. It's such a 2020 thing to happen that you get slated for saying things that should just be blindingly obvious to everybody. I put on Twitter, I think last year, that I don't judge anybody by the colour of their skin, and it got thousands and thousands of hateful kind of pile-on retweets, including Bernice King. of all people, daughter of Martin Luther King, to tell me how wrong it is that I don't judge people on the color of their skin. It's just absolutely mad. And this is the problem, isn't it? That fewer and fewer people want to talk about this stuff, particularly the white working class boys argument, or the International Men's Day debate that we had, where I said, actually, there are, white lads, places like Mansfield, who really struggle. And in fact, men all across the country who these issues aren't raised. And when you do raise it, you get accused of being sexist, or you get accused of all sorts of ridiculous things. As I say, to me, it's about treating people equally and as individuals based on what they need, not lumping everybody into categories.
Well, I've got to say, Ben, I'm personally really, really grateful for you taking up the baton of International Men's Day. I've been an ambassador for IMD in the UK for I think 5 or 6 years now. We took a lot of flack earlier on. I'm so happy it's actually been talked about in chamber. One of the specific things you called for this year was the introduction of a Minister for Men. Why do we need a Minister for Men, Ben?
Yeah, that was one that went a little bit mad.
Yeah.
Nobody in the chamber batted an eyelid because we all just went, oh, yeah. But then the BBC clipped it. And a standard story, right? So you make an 11-minute speech with all the nuance of the debate about some of the challenges that men face, mental health and, family courts and all the rest of it. And then say, look, we have a minister that looks specifically how all of our legislation impacts on women. Why do we not have that for men when we can see this big list of inequalities in the system that exist and challenges that exist in the system? Why not have a minister for men? And it just went mad on social media afterwards. But I still think ultimately I'd rather get rid of them both altogether, actually, and let's, as I say, look at people based on what they need rather than what identity box they happen to fall into. But it's hugely challenging because you do get slated for talking about some of this stuff.
And if there were to be a Minister for Men, Ben Bradley, would you be up for doing the job?
Yeah, I imagine I'm pretty far away from the shortlist, I would have thought. But yeah, of course, I mean, there's so many challenges, Martin, that were raised in that debate around mental health, around access to family courts and children and all sorts of real difficult challenges that need to be addressed and don't get talked about enough.
Thank you, Ben.